I'm Erin Lawler-Patterson, the Goodness Chick. I'm an international speaker, life coach, author, and proud part of the Mental Health News Radio Network. Join me on the journey of empowering you to kick butt in life, not get kicked by life, addressing mental health, relationships, self-care, and giving back. I am both honored and humbled for today's guests. Tricia and Nathan Lawrenson will be joining me from the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I first met them back in 1999. They married in 2004. It'll be 16 years this year. And just a little bit of background about them. Two amazing individuals that I feel honored to know. They mean a whole lot and have a special place in my heart and my family's heart. Tricia was born with cystic fibrosis. CF is a terminal genetically inherited disease that directly impacts the lungs. In 2007, a few years after Tricia and Nathan were married, they were advised by their doctors to no longer try having a child, something that they both desperately desired because it was deemed too risky with CF and her physical condition. They heeded their advice, but Tricia had been praying secretly for a miracle child. During that time, she was also beginning physical therapy to be placed on a transplant list for a double lung transplant. It was during this time that she found out that they were pregnant. Both Tricia and the baby were given a 50% survival rate. And it was their obstetrician, who had never advised for an abortion throughout her professional career, that had advised for an abortion. Tricia and Nathan made a decision, believing in the sanctity of life, that they were going to go ahead with the pregnancy. No hesitation. Fast forward, January 8th, Gwyneth Rose Lawrenson was born, 24 weeks, weighing under 1 pound, 6 ounces, measuring 12 inches long. I had the privilege of visiting Nathan and Tricia shortly after she had Gwyneth Rose, and I remember seeing Gwyneth so small and so fragile and so precious. And when I tell you, I still think about that experience. It's just, wow, in awe, just in awe of and the beauty of life, and God being instrumental through every step of Tricia's pregnancy. And now fast forwarding, a number of years later, Gwyneth is in 6th grade, healthy, beautiful young lady. A few years ago, they adopted Hunter, who is in 8th grade. Amazing human beings, amazing family. But less than 7 weeks after she had Gwyneth Rose, she had her first double lung transplant, new set of lungs, which takes a whole lot of physical therapy and time. And with that, 6 years later in 2013, she was once again very near death. Tricia received her second double lung transplant. Recovery with this was a little bit longer, slower, and difficult, but Tricia's a fighter, man. Her strength and her breathing strengthened over time. Tricia has become an advocate, we'll say an ambassador, when it comes to talking about CF, about pushing towards research development, advocating for research, spreading awareness, but also for organ donation. She has made her voice very loud and clear about the importance and significance that it plays, and someone such as she that's a recipient of that, how it's something we need to think about and take seriously, because the bottom line is at some point, every single one of us will take our last breath. And will we be organ donors or not? And we'll get in that to today's episode and how important that is. Nathan has truly become an advocate, very transparent when it comes to talking about mental illness. He struggles with depression, and something that's so prevalent and isn't as widely talked about as it should be. And with him, his transparency and honesty, served in the ministry for many years, talking about his struggles. And with that, removing stigmas that go along with that, go along with mental health in so many ways, about the importance of pursuing help and support and all the many things that go along with that. They are fantastic human beings that I admire and I love with all my heart. Next week, they will be going to Duke where Tricia will be evaluated if she will be a recipient of a third double lung transplant. Third double lung transplant, there's only been 12 that have been performed in the United States, 24 worldwide. So this is a pretty big decision, pretty significant. And this is what we're going to be talking about, so many facets of life today. The reality of the fragility of life. What are you doing with your life? What are you investing in? And just hearing from two dynamic, inspirational human beings that I know, just like me, you'll be getting a whole lot out of today's episode. All right, we are coming to you today with two very special human beings that I just adore. I love anything that I could throw their way in terms of just admiration. It is them, Tricia and Nathan Lawrenson, joining me from the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I want to welcome you guys today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We love you, Aaron.
We love you guys. I'm like, I want to hug you, but I can't do it through Skype. I am honored to have you guys on the show, and I really want to spend some time talking about things that you guys have going on right now, but really your passion and things that you have kind of used as a platform over the years to really advocate for causes, really shed light on things that we kind of get weird and uncomfortable talking about. And I'm going to just jump right into kind of the first thing I want to focus on today is the reality that we get really uncomfortable talking about sometimes, and we don't talk about it, is that so many people live with invisible disabilities, struggles that no one can visibly see. And we as human beings can be very quick to judge with things that we don't see. And too often with that, it causes this judgment heartache, unfair challenges. But both of you live with invisible disabilities. Would you share with us, both of you, however you want to roll with it, how these impact you and insight, this is a big one, insight that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Very good. You go first.
Okay. First of all, Aaron, we love you. Thanks so much for having us.
Love you guys.
We love your family. We got to spend time with some of your family, but not you, which sucks because we really went there to see you. We were hoping
I know. Well, I thought, I knew those notes were going to come up, but I was there in my heart. I heard they had a huge cutout of me in the living room.
We saw your face. So we love your family and thanks for having
you guys, man.
I don't really consider my illness a disability.
That's not the right word. Yes.
I don't mind you using that word. I just personally, because I live with two disabled people, and I don't even really consider Tricia's illness not always a disability. Sometimes it is. Our daughter's she lives with a disability. But I live with depression and anxiety. I think, first of all, I think everybody lives with hidden stuff, right? And some of it's illness and some of it's just pain and some of it's experiences in the past that we don't want to talk about, abuse. I think we all live with things that either we try to hide or we think we have to hide. And I think, mental illness is one of those things that's becoming much more, it's getting a lot more exposure these days because of some celebrity suicides and because of, the gun violence, with schools and with people who are doing crazy things. And so it's good that it's getting exposed. It's unfortunate that it's getting exposed in those ways. It'd be great if we could expose it in good, healthy ways. But, one of the things for Tricia and I that we live our lives by is we believe in telling our stories. And I think we'll get into that a little more in a little bit. But for me, I wasn't diagnosed until about 10 years ago. So I've lived with this, especially the depression. The anxiety's kind of come on in more recent years, but the depression has been there at least since high school, probably earlier. And a lot of it has to do with my personality. A lot of it has to do with just how I responded to things in my youth. And I was never abused. I grew up in a really healthy family. My parents love me. They're married. They've been married for 40 years. And I have two sisters who I love who live close by, and we all see each other very often and never experienced any traumatic death or illness growing. I had a very healthy kind of blah childhood, nothing crazy ever happened. So, so first of all, I think, when I think of mental illness, I think a lot of times especially in the media, they're always looking for, well, what triggered this? What caused this? And a lot of times it's nothing big. Sometimes it's just a chemical thing in your brain that, and I've learned a lot more about it recently, going to some therapy and talking with counselors. So to get back to that hidden kind of illness type thing, there are still some things that I don't talk about with a lot of people, but talking about just the fact that I have depression, I have anxiety is something I'm very open about. Especially once I was diagnosed and I kind of knew, because, I think the fact that we all hide stuff isn't good. And I think when we push that stuff down and we hide it and we don't talk about it, that's where a lot of stuff just in our society, our culture, all the evil, crappy stuff comes out, because we tend to hide all that stuff. And I think for us, and I've learned this from Tricia, because the moment I met Tricia, she was extremely open about her illness. I mean, the first date we went on, she said, well, something I want to tell you, I've got cystic fibrosis. I knew nothing about it. And so she explained to me what it meant and what her lifespan might be, what her future might look like. So I've learned that from her. But for us, for people to share the hidden stuff is so important. And I still struggle with that, because there's stuff I don't like sharing to people. And it doesn't mean you just have to walk around telling everybody all your crap all the time. There's certain places I go see a counselor, and I tell them things that I might not tell most other people, because they can listen, they can not judge me, and they can help me walk through that. And I think that's the fear, especially with social media. Like I've kind of backed off social media a lot the past 4 or 5 years, because I wasn't responding well to the trolls and the people who take the things you share and try to turn it back on you. Yeah. And that's our society right now, is when people actually do want to be open and honest, a lot of times, people grab it and throw it back in your face, and you end up just with that crap. You feel like you end up with that crap all over you. So for me, being open about depression and anxiety, hopefully will help other people, and I can do it in a healthy way, or at least I hope I can. And I've gotten a lot of that from Tricia, watching how open she's been with her illness.
So I would have to say, Aaron, for my illness, it seems like a little bit of a mixed bag to be an invisible illness. Definitely when I was younger, into my early teen years, I actually liked other people not knowing, and I'm the type of person that I don't like attention drawn to me in any form. So in elementary school, when I had to go to the nurse's office for my inhalers and my enzymes, I always could take a friend, but I didn't like making a big deal about it, because I really didn't want my class to know what was going on. And then as I continued to get older and I had hospitalizations that would take me away from playing soccer for our rec team or softball, I would kind of keep it low key as much as possible. But it was during the maturity in my years that I realized understanding who I was and how I could use that to share about my life and teaching others about CF. And those maturity years, to the point of when I was 18 and met Nate, one of the reasons I had to tell him right away was not necessarily because it was something I was keen on sharing right away, but Nate made a joke, and I'll never forget this. When we first met and we were hanging out, he laughed at me, and he said, after I was talking to him, he said, "It's funny because you kind of remind me of my 7-year-old granddaddy who has emphysema when you laugh." Starting point of, I probably should go ahead and share with him that I do have a lung disease. I do not have emphysema.
And that was our first date, and I obviously did not know how to talk to women.
Charm, baby. But Nathan, what year in high school were you guys? Because I feel like I remember when you guys, around the time you first met, was it?
Yeah, so I had just come out of my freshman year of college, come back home.
Oh, it was college, okay.
Tricia was just finishing her senior year of high school.
Yeah.
She was home, so she was kind of taking a little slow and just wrapping things up.
So 18, 19.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of my funny stories to share. But I also struggled when I was younger to just show my weaknesses. And so I remember being hospitalized. In order to travel around the hospital, you're required to sit in a wheelchair. And I would straight out refuse, because as a teenager, I didn't want to show my friends that I was weak and this different disabled person. Now at 37, I have no issues with getting the help that I need and sitting in a wheelchair if necessary. But those were some hard years of figuring out, who I was and how God created me and how I could share my life story with others. Another funny story about the invisible illness is, now that I'm older, and I've been through some things like cancer and transplants, and my body's not the same. One of the diagnoses I've had recently is alopecia. So I actually am missing most of my hair. I wear a wig. I don't really have natural eyebrows or eyelashes. And so Nate and I were in the hospital a couple months ago, and we were sitting at the cafeteria and we were just eating, and somebody came up to us and they said, "Hey, do you mind if I pray for you?" I was like, "Oh, that's really kind." I wasn't on an IV pole. I wasn't wearing my band, but she obviously noticed I was sickly. And so I was surprised by that. And I thought, what a great thing for her to come over. And then right before she asked to pray for us, she asked me about my cancer diagnosis, which I don't have cancer at the moment. So nowadays that invisible illness is like out the window because I have all these other things going on. But I think as you mature and you understand your disease more and you can explain it to others, because that's another part I had a hard time explaining it to kids who are my age at a young age. But now that I've been through 2 transplants and I'm okay with showing my weaknesses, God's allowed me to live out this life calling and given me the strength, whether it's mental fortitude, my peace of mind, or just the ability to be content in these circumstances that I've been through. So I like to be able to, the mixed bag is the positive part of it is there's so many other hidden diseases. I talk with a lot of people, whether it's depression or anxiety. Diabetes is another one, EDS syndrome, which you can look up. These are things that people live out their daily life, and others may not know what's going on. And maybe they'll come out of the car with a handicap sign and they'll have looks and people judging them because they don't realize what truly is happening on the inside of them. And that can be a hard pill to swallow. And then on the on the other side of it, there's diseases like Nathan was talking about and illnesses that our daughter struggles with. So being born so premature, she actually has cerebral palsy, which and she's hard of hearing. So she wears an implant in one ear and a hearing aid in the other. And it's very obvious outwardly that she has a disability. And yet Gwyneth inspires me because despite having those outward disabilities, she rarely complains. She's always just like the shining, bright, happy child that
it's like she doesn't know she has a disability, But
it's almost like a gift that God's given her, that she's so positive despite being different-abled. And that, for me, inspires me every day for the struggles that I have that aren't as noticeable, yet she has these noticeable things that maybe kids aren't hanging around or spending time with her like the others. And she has lunch hours where her one-on-one teacher pulls out kids to eat with her, because typically kids won't be like, "Hey, Gwen, come sit at our table." Yeah. And the same goes for my son. He has his own challenges, yet he's not negative or depressed about how God has made and created him. And so my kids really inspire me when it comes to our differences and the things that we struggle with.
You used a term that I dig, the different-abled. And I think about, my mind's going in a few different directions here. A few days ago, I had the privilege of speaking in front of a bunch of middle school kids about being a superhero and how, we think of Iron Man and Superman. And I said, we need to throw those out the window because they're not real people. And my point being to you guys is you are, and you might not agree with me, real life superheroes where you have people that have differences, right? We're all different. If we have our different struggles, Nate, kind of how like you talked about in the beginning, we all have our stuff. And Tricia, as you were talking, I kind of had this vision of you in high school, in a hospital hallway with a wheelchair, thinking, this is a weakness. And the more hearing you guys talk, your differences in what God is, how God has made you, have made you, your family, for the strongest people I know. And when you talk to anybody in terms of people who you guys inspire, and I believe if we focus more on being, and not open books, Nate, just like you had talked about, because I think we don't need to be open books, because it leaves room for trolls and people just making just, whoa. But where we begin to talk about, we're all different. We all have our different struggles and hurts and pains. And when you see somebody getting out, out of their spot in the grocery store with a little hanging tag that says disability, pause before you speak. And us being kind and saying, Gwyneth is at lunch, come and sit with me. That's exactly what I sat, talk with these kids the other day. You could be somebody's superhero through your kindness, through your compassion. And I think in today's day and age, I know compassion is something sometimes we're lacking. And we all have our stuff. And Nathan, when you kind of started beginning to putting, things out there with your own, with depression and anxiety, when I tell you, I ate up everything you said. I admired your bravery and your fortitude, Tricia. I've done so with you since I first met you, and thinking of all the people that have read and heard your life stories, if you will, and will never get in touch with you because they won't, but have been transformed and have been inspired and have thought, I don't have to go at life by myself. And I think to you guys that I want to say thank you, first of all. I admire you, but looking at that, the term you use, different abled, we're all different abled, and we have our stuff. And when we come together and stop judging, I think judging is massive, and kind of infuse that element of compassion, I think not only will lives be inspired, but lives could be saved. That's kind of.
Yeah, I think one of the things, one of the other things Trish and I've talked about our whole relationship is how, I don't tell everybody this because a lot of people find this hard, but I guess I'm putting it out here so whoever listens will hear it. I've never once prayed for Tricia to be healed from her cystic fibrosis, which I know for a lot of people, especially people who are believers like us, and healing is a big part of a lot of believers' faith walk. That seems very strange and almost wrong that I've never prayed for healing for Tricia's CF. And it's not that I don't think she could be healed. Nobody's ever been healed by CF. There's drugs coming out. We believe very soon they're going to pretty much cure CF. But for us, it's, let's imagine what would our lives be like if Tricia had never had CF. Okay, maybe we could make it to a 50-year wedding anniversary. That would be good. But what about all the things that would get taken away? Like you were saying, all the opportunities we've had to speak, and all the opportunities Tricia's had to travel around and speak, all the people we've met in the hospital. I never spent a moment in a hospital until I started going with Tricia to her appointments. I mean, literally, I went, my grandfather was in the hospital and my grandmother, but other than like going to visit them for a few minutes at a time, I've never been sick. I never had never. So the hospital is a very foreign thing to me. And now it's like a second home to me. And I think like I'm so much more comfortable now talking to people who are sick and who that would have been so awkward for me as an 18-year-old for my dad to say, my dad's a pastor, hey, Nate, come do visitation with me to so-and-so, at homebound who's sick and you're ready to die. I'd be like in the corner, like, I don't know what to do, what to say. And now it's like, I can do that, And so I think a lot of times, we've found that a lot of people we meet spend so much time wishing they weren't sick and weren't ill that they miss all the good things that could come into their life if they allowed them to. Like, which something you said just now made me think of that. And so I think that's important. That's been an important part of our life. We just accept what it is. Now, it doesn't mean Tricia doesn't take her meds every day and she's like, well, I'm going to die. So, let's just bring it on. No, we still fight it in that way, but we accept it. And once you accept it, not like it's inevitable, but okay, this is who I am, then you can, and this is what I've seen with Tricia's life, and this is the only reason I can say this now is because she's in my life, is now, okay, how can we turn this around for good? How can we use this to bless other people? How can we, we live by a saying that says God never wastes a hurt, right? If there's a pain in your life, you can make that a sucky thing, a crappy thing, or you can turn that around. Okay, what can I bring positive from this?
And just being content despite your circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they might be.
Yeah.
That's pretty massive.
Yeah.
And it's like, Nate, with you had said, with what we've been given, a choice we have in life, and everybody has that choice. You can use what you've been through and are going through to fuel you and make an impact, or consume you. And it's kind of like that fork in the road that all of us will have to decide with. And both of you have used it, in so many ways to not just to impact other people and raise awareness about things. And I'm going to go hand in hand with this, with raising awareness. Tricia, I know in an interview you had mentioned that each year you have written a note to the families whose donor has extended their life to them, your life through their death. Rewording that, I'm sorry. Organ donation can kind of be an uncomfortable topic for people. And I don't know why that is, but it is. I think some kind of detach thinking about it. And with that, lose out on the ability to give a gift that's beyond measure. It's a gift. It is a gift. And you've really become a spokesperson for organ donation, as someone who is fiercely advocating for something that's extremely important. And how important is it, having listeners tuning in today, how important is it to check the yes box on their license and express their wishes to their family? I'm going to give you the floor.
I love this question, Erin. It's a fabulous question to ask. So I'm going to start with what you talked about. I wish that death wasn't such a taboo subject in our culture, but it is for whatever reason. And so I think that goes hand in hand, which means that just talking about those decisions you make in the last few minutes of your life is just not a common dinner conversation a lot of people have, which I wish in most families that would change. And I think it's only uncomfortable because we make it uncomfortable, whether it's our American culture, our family is uncomfortable with talking about it. I would love to change that precedent. But if you ask Nate or my kids, we talk about the possibility of me dying. We have since my first transplant, and we don't hide the fact. We're open about it. I usually code it with some kind of humor, because in my family, that's how we deal with the hard topics in life.
Yeah, I mean, it happened last night. We were watching a movie or something, and Tricia made a joke about, death. When we die, here's, and I don't remember what it was. And our kids are.
It was The Lion King we were watching.
Yeah, and our kids part of, and we've learned around other people. I remember we were playing a card game years ago with some friends of the family, and I made a joke about Tricia being sick and possibly dying, and the whole room just went quiet. And at that moment,
uncomfortable. Yeah.
And not for everybody else. And I need to remember, but yeah, it's very comfortable for us and our kids.
But I think that's a healthy thing. It's, one of the things I've been really open with my son about is, like, I talk about my sister all the time. I talk about my grandma. We talk about, we're so weird as a culture. Like, I'm like, here's a secret. We're all dying at some point, dude. We're all dying. And whether that's, I'm 42, I could die today driving to go pick Jack up from school, or in 40 years, and I think that conversation, when we make it normal, we don't have people so traumatized and weird, or waiting, are you going to be an organ donor? You're whoever. It's already a topic we've had.
And just to give an example to that, I think I read on Facebook recently, thinking of Kobe Bryant and his daughter and how tragic that was. Yet for our family to talk about it, it's really not that big of a deal, because I remind my kids every day, we don't know, well, not every day, but as often as I can, we don't know how much time we're given. So we don't know if we have tomorrow, or if we have until we're 60, 80, like most people would expect as an American. And I think that really woke up our culture just this week to how short life truly is. And this is something I'm always keenly aware of, but others may not be. And so going into organ donation, talking about organ donation for me is really easy because I've been impacted by it in such a positive way. And for instance, when I was doing my Instacart job a couple months ago before I got really sick, I'd often need to get people's IDs in case they were getting alcohol. And
so you may have to explain Instacart, because I
love me some Instacart, baby.
Publix. I loved it. I love shopping for food. I love food. I love meeting new people. And I was doing a service for everybody. So it just was
I didn't know you could even do that until she was like, I'm going to make money doing this. And I was like, that's awesome.
So bringing up organ donation, it was easy for me to take their card. Oh, look, they have a heart on their card, and thank them. You know what? Thank you for being an organ donor, because you know what? I've been impacted by two people who made that decision in my life today because of that. So I could easily just bring it into conversation. And I'm so grateful that I have that platform and opportunity to share with others about the positivity of organ donation. And I feel like more and more often God's bringing people into my life that have had tragic circumstances, and God's been able to use my story to just encourage them and to thank them and to allow their loved one to be remembered in such a special legacy of giving that ultimate gift. So going on with that, I've been able to speak at so many different venues, which has been amazing for me. Here locally, I've been able to talk to a lot of church gatherings and school gatherings and movies. We had 5 Feet Apart last year, and that was an amazing opportunity to go and speak about my cystic fibrosis and organ donation. And if anybody gets a chance to see that movie, it just came out on DVD and I think on Netflix. So that's another venue. Business meetings. And then around the US as a large, I've been able to go to large medical companies to speak and share my story with them. And American Board of Specialty Conference a couple of years ago in Chicago I was invited to. And my friend Patience and I spoke about our stories, and hers is very different from mine, but I was able to bring up organ donation there. And just around the world, Nate and I have been to France a couple of times, and they had a premiere of a movie called Oxygen. And they used Matt Glock and Sylvie Glock were there to translate for me. And I was able to share my story about organ donation in France.
Wow.
And that was a really amazing opportunity that God gave me. And in France and other cultures, it's a little bit different how their system works, and people being willing to give. I don't think they have a card system, although I honestly don't know what their system is right now. But to share that with people and to make that connection with people I wouldn't necessarily make a connection with.
The system in the U.S. is basically, like you were talking about, the driver's license, and that's important. But you mentioned loved ones, right? Telling your friends and family. That's the key, because in a lot of places in the U.S., a lot of states, you can have that heart on your driver's license, and your mom, dad, brother, sister, wife, husband shows up at the hospital, and the doctor comes out and say, "We're sorry, we couldn't." And they say, we know that he's registered as an organ donor, and you have the power to say, "No, we don't want that." And so your last wishes can be reversed by your loved one. So it's very important for you to communicate with really everybody, because you never know who's going to show up, but especially the people who have the power of attorney in your life. Look, I'm going to come back and haunt you in your death if you give me my own. Say to them, look, this is what I want. This is what I want. If you want to honor me, and that makes it a lot easier too, because the last thing you want is, for you to pass away traumatically, unexpectedly, and your family's sitting there, 1 minute you're alive and the next you're dead. Now they have to make this decision. But when you've said to them, this is what I want, you've made the decision for them. They can say to the doctor, to the chaplain, my father's a local chaplain, and he has these conversations quite often. They can say to them, well, this is what they wanted. And that makes their life easier. And again, like you were saying, none of us wants to think about that. None of us wants to think about us lying on the bed in the emergency room dead with our families next to us. We don't want to think about that, but it's important. And I think about Tricia's life has been saved by by the two donors that have given her lungs. But thinking about, okay, everybody who knows Tricia, their life has been affected by that gift. Not just me and the kids, not just her parents and our brothers and sisters, but everybody who knows Tricia has been affected by that gift. Think, what other gift can somebody give that can affect that many people in a positive way? You know, it's hard to think about anything else that has that power.
And going back to the topic of death, I don't know that Americans, our culture, will ever be comfortable talking about that topic. But I would hope that we can at least, like Nate said, share those wishes of, you know what, when that time comes, this is what I would want. And for our families to know that and to appreciate that. And for us, maybe not during Thanksgiving or the next wedding to discuss it, but have a time where we're intentional about discussing that with each other. And I know for the rest of my life, Aaron, I plan on making it my mission to just share with others about how it's impacted me, and to tell others to join the millions of lives out there who have signed up and said yes. And the card on your license is not the only way to do so. You can definitely go online and register. And I have that on my Instagram account of how you can go about doing that. But it's definitely an amazing legacy that you can leave for others, to give the greatest gift possible, which is life for others.
It's a gift. It's a gift. And I think when we use our terminology in the right way, where it's not necessarily focusing on the fact that I'm going to die, but saying, you know, when and if and whatever happens to make things easier for you and being less stressful, I would like to be an organ donor. And I think everything is how we kind of like articulate our conversation, where it doesn't have to be super heavy. And I always infuse humor too when things are like super, because it just lightens things. But what do you want to have? This will make it easier for you in the long run. And I know, I'll share this really quick. The summer before Shayna passed away, I lost a cousin in a car crash. And I remember sitting and I was 21 at the time, and Shayna was 17, and Jesse was I guess almost 19. And we had said, I was like, if anything happens, what are we going to do? We had this conversation. We're going to be organ donors, 100%. And I will tell you, at the time, it sucks. It's heart-wrenching. But to know, as time, you close your eyes and think, all these people, that domino ripple effect, and where it's one of the most beautiful things we can provide somebody, and talking about it and breaking those walls down before it actually happens, it makes it so much easier for people. And again, like Tricia had said, it doesn't have to be around Thanksgiving dinner, like who's cutting the turkey and, hey, I want to donate. But it's like, going for a walk, making it where it's something we can digest, because in the long run, it makes it easier for our loved ones. So I want to say, thank you for being an ambassador for that, because that ripple effect, and just like you referenced, Nathan, a few minutes ago, that you've had, Tricia, from two other people's sacrifice, is mind-boggling. And until we all get to heaven, we are going to have no concept about the domino effect, right? No concept. Boom. And it's because of your voice. And I want to say thank you for that. Like, beyond my any words I could use, it's a miracle. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit, still focusing on miracles. Both you and Gwyneth are walking miracles, right? You were both given a 50% chance of survival when, you and Nathan were informed that you were pregnant. She was born 16 weeks premature, weighed a little more than a pound at birth, 1 pound, 6 ounces. Your doctor, who had never recommended abortion in their professional career, recommended that you abort. And from the time you were told you were pregnant to present day, your journey has possessed so many modern day miracles, just like we had talked about with organ donation. And I know you and Nathan will be heading to Duke next week, being a possible candidate for a third lung transplant, where only 12 have been done in the United States, 24 worldwide. I'd like you to share what it means to you for both you and Gwyneth to be considered walking miracles, and the role that your faith and relationship with God has played in the past 37 years of your life. So that was a big one.
It was. And I'm going to start off with just telling you that I'm your everyday gal. everyday chick. And at least when I'm healthy and I don't require tube feeds and IVs and a walker to get around. But I love coffee in the morning as soon as I get up. I love investing in my friends and community during the day when my kids are at school. Spending time with my family is my ultimate love language. Yeah. And I relish the times when I'm physically able to get around to take those walks, to visit our beach, which is just a mile away. As you know, living in Florida,
beautiful.
how amazing an opportunity it is to live so close to the beach and to see that every day of your life. Eating out's one of my favorite pastimes with my husband here. And I can't get enough of pie. I just love pie. So I'm your everyday girl.
Favorite place on the Outer Banks for pie?
Oh, girl. Well, Black Pelican's a hard one.
Oh, Black Pelican.
Tortugas and their home desserts.
Yeah, Black Pelican and Tortugas.
So many different places.
Yeah.
I love them all. And I love making homemade pie. Peach pie in the summer is one of my favorite things to do when I'm healthy. But going back, the fact that God was listening to so many prayers in 2008 when we asked and requested, please pray for Gwyneth and myself. And God was listening. I don't even know how many people were praying for us, but he gave me that deep sense of peace that we would be okay, despite the scariness that was going around us at all moments in the ICU. And God is in the business of doing miracles. And so if you don't believe that, here I have my Bible.
Bring it on, girl.
Malachi is the way to start about all the people God used, ordinary people, ordinary circumstances to do extraordinary things. And that's how I feel my own life is. It's just that I'm an ordinary person that God used millions of people to be praying for a certain circumstance to happen, and he allowed it to happen. And I realize that doesn't happen for everybody. I realize not every prayer I've prayed has been answered in the way I would like, but God has done it in his miraculous plan of what he wanted. And so the fact that God was listening to so many prayers for Gwyneth and I is extremely humbling, that we were able to survive what we did. And like I said, in the Bible, there are full stories of men and women who God performed miracles in their life. And growing up as a child, my faith developed during that stage. I grew up in a family that had Christian values and instilled strong values in my own heart. And so living with the chronic disease that I had of cystic fibrosis, I often spent a lot of time reading God's word and journaling and talking to God and working through those emotions of how I can get through the hard times. Because I had friends that when I was a young age were really, really sick in the hospital and passed away in their teen years, in their 20s. And so I needed some kind of strong foundation to help me get through those times, not only for my friends, but knowing that would be my future. And so my life verse very early on was Jeremiah 29:11, which I'd like to read, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you." This is the Lord's declaration. "Plans for your well-being, not for your disaster, plans to give you a future and a hope." And so I wasn't ignorant of the fact, like I said, that bad things can happen to those who love God. And we live in a sinful world. We live in a world that is corrupt. And we have the fires in Australia, and we have earthquakes happening. And it's just, our lives are short here on earth. Yet, and young, innocent children affected by cancer is like one of the hardest things to see and witness. But I claim God's promises that he ultimately is intending us to have a good, fulfilled life, that we can see his plans and his purpose, and the hope that I hold on to in my life, that God has helped me through those difficult moments and those points of not knowing if I would make it through the next day. And so I ultimately don't hope in myself, but in God and my faith in him and my strength. Often where I can explain how I did this or where that peace came from, I just have to point to God and my faith in him, that he's gotten me through those things and allowed miracle after miracle in my life. And I don't know what the future holds for this third transplant, but I know God wants the best. And so I hold on to that hope for whatever outcome may occur in the months to come.
And you have so many people praying for you. I do want to plug this. I'd ask you guys listening to keep Tricia, Nathan, and their family in your prayers. I know when it comes to anything medical, it is not cheap. And with that, getting the community, and community can be global, involved in the weeks and the months and in the years ahead. If you go to, hop on your GoFundMe page, 65 Roses for Patty Sue, I'm going to have the link in the notes below. I'd ask you to really prayerfully consider not just praying for this family, but also contributing, whether that's $1, whether it's $1,000, whatever it is. Money helps is really the bottom line. I will have the links below. And I really would also encourage you, as you're listening today, to pass this on to friends, family members, talking about things we need to talk about, because we can be weirdos sometimes. And I think there's absolutely power in conversation about topics we all need to talk about at some point or another, not waiting till it's too late, but also encouraging and loving and being kind. And one of the things that I have found throughout the course of my life is that, whether we're a minute away or 20 hours away from somebody by plane, we can make things seem a whole lot smaller and less distant when we pray, when we encourage through social media, through whatever it is, or GoFundMe pages, just like we're going to have in a link below. And when I tell you, Nathan and Tricia, if you haven't gotten it already, man, you got to listen again. And if you do, then are just amazing people and how God has used them. I cannot tell you how honored I am that God allowed our paths to cross many years ago. Is crazy train, I think almost 20 years ago, back in, at Nags Head Church in Nags Head, North Carolina. And even though I only lived there for a few years, part of me will always consider, that town home, church away from home, if you will. Love you guys. Love your parents. Pastor Rick, if you're listening to this, for the rest of my life, I will just have you in the back of my head as somebody who has faced so many things in terms of from being a volunteer fire chaplain to the man who sat with my family when we had to make the decision with my sister. And man, you guys are good peeps, and God has used you in so many ways. And I want to say thank you, Nathan and Tricia. From the
a quote that's really inspired me lately, and it makes me think of you, and just knowing you personally and what you've done with your life and out of tragic circumstances, comes from Toby Mac. And this has just really spoke to me recently. And one of his quotes, actually Morgan Harper Nichols might be the person, but it's his Speak Life quote. It says, "Tell the story of the mountain you climbed. Your words could become a page in someone else's survival guide." And you use your public platform to help others in ways that you won't know and realize until you're in heaven. And I think we all have the opportunity to share a story of what has happened to us, as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. And God wants to use those to encourage others. And so it might not be CF, it might not be transplant, it might not be depression, but we all have a struggle in our life or a hardship that we can share. And if we do so, imagine the impact it could make to help somebody else get through that.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Aaron, for having us. We love you
guys. Love you guys too.
If you enjoyed today's episode, there's a lot more encouragement and life-kicking strategies on goodnesschick.com. Have a great day, my friends.